May 1, 1851. In Hyde Park, palms scrape a glass roof, trumpets lift above the crowd. Londoners stare upward as though tomorrow has arrived early. It was called the Great Exhibition, a peaceful meeting of nations. Beneath those glittering panes sat a sales pitch for British industry and empire. Queen Victoria enters beneath a vaulted nave of iron, glass, flags, and foliage. Beside her walks Prince Albert, its tireless advocate. The palace is so vast, Paxton preserves mature elm trees inside. Their branches rise through the roof, turning a problem into theatrical wonder. On opening day, the building's transparency is the message. No stone fortress, Britain presents progress as light, speed, and visible order. Thousands pack the avenues. Outside, more spectators press along the park. Trumpets, cheers, and footsteps mingle with an almost disbelieving hush. Before we walk farther, hold two ideas together. This was a genuine marvel of access and invention and a staged argument about power. British manufacturers faced an uncomfortable criticism. They engineered brilliantly, reformers said, but often designed with too little taste or imagination. Prince Albert, Henry Cole, the Royal Society of Arts, and a Royal Commission proposed one remedy: bring art, industry, science, commerce, education together. Parliament created the Royal Commission on January 3, 1850. Its task: mount an international display of manufactures and make it pay for itself. The organizers called it universal. That word matters. A universal exhibition suggests equals meeting. The floor plan told a more unequal story. Britain supplied the stage, rules, money, and commercial map of the world. Other nations entered a show already framed by British priorities. Then a gardener changes everything. Joseph Paxton designed glasshouses for the Duke of Devonshire, where plants needed light, height, and controlled air. On June 11, 1850, Paxton sketched an answer: a building of repeating iron parts and glass, more greenhouse than palace. The design wins because it rises quickly, admits daylight, and leaves Hyde Park's trees standing. Its boldest feature is its gentlest gesture. At its height, the Crystal Palace stretches nearly a third of a mile. Iron ribs and glass walls let visitors see the sky. Roughly 2,000 workers arrive daily. 200 horses haul materials. Standard pieces move from workshop to park, locking into one enormous machine. Nearly 294,000 panes catch London weather. The building looks delicate, but its modular frame makes it astonishingly quick to erect. That is 1851's first shock. Architecture need not grow slowly from stone. It could be manufactured, shipped, repeated, and assembled before your eyes. More than 100,000 objects arrive from 13,937 exhibitors. They represent 34 nations and more than 30 territories under British imperial rule. Walk the aisles, and you meet locomotives, machine tools, textiles, furniture, porcelain, scientific instruments, fabrics, and objects made to prove what modern production can do. Some displays promise convenience, others promise prestige. Together they train the eye to desire things not simply for use, but for finish, novelty, and status. Here, consumer culture gets an enormous showroom. The visitor is not merely learning about industry, the visitor is rehearsing how a modern customer should look and choose. Yet the arrangement is not neutral. Britain reserves a huge central presence, while colonial displays help furnish a story of resources flowing toward the imperial metropole. In colonial sections, raw materials appear beside crafted goods. Sugarcane becomes evidence in Britain's argument about imperial possession and productivity. Those materials had histories outside the glass walls: fields, mines, coerced labor, unequal trade, and communities living with the consequences of conquest. The Koh-i-Noor diamond draws crowds. Britain exhibits it only after the violent conquest and annexation of Punjab, turning a seized object into imperial spectacle. Look closely at that transformation. Under glass, violence can be made to look like ownership. A display case can conceal a chain of force. The exhibition did not display colonized lands as equal partners. It sorted objects through Victorian racial assumptions, commercial categories, and the confidence of a ruling empire. That does not erase the astonishment visitors felt. It asks us to hear two sounds at once: wonder at human skill and the machinery of domination behind it. Admission prices shape who gets to experience this wonder. Early tickets are costly, but cheaper 1 shilling days later pull working people and families through the gates. Railways make the journey possible on a new scale. Excursion crowds arrive from beyond London, turning a royal project into a national destination. Over 5.5 months, more than 6 million visits are recorded. For many people, this is the first great mass spectacle of industrial Britain. Imagine the choreography: queues at dawn, railway smoke near the city, polished boots on gravel, then that sudden cool brightness beneath acres of glass. Inside, people of different classes share the same route, if not the same freedom or comfort. The exhibition sells access while preserving Victorian social hierarchies. Queen Victoria calls the opening one of the greatest and most glorious days of her life. Her words capture the triumph organizers wanted the country to feel. Prince Albert sees something more practical than a party. He wants design education, stronger manufacturing, and a public able to recognize quality in everyday goods. That ambition matters because the exhibition is not simply a museum. It is a demonstration, marketplace, lesson, and advertisement fused into one enormous walkthrough experience. Visitors compare nations through objects: French luxury goods, British machinery, American inventions, colonial materials. The arrangement makes competition feel visible, sortable, and almost natural. But no object arrives alone. Every polished cabinet carries timber, labor, capital, transport, and someone else's decision about what deserves a place in the frame. Even the palace's materials tell a bigger story. Mass-produced iron and sheet glass make enclosure cheap enough and grand enough to become an event. Paxton's prefabricated system points toward later stations, shopping arcades, conservatories, and exhibition halls. The building is an ancestor of spaces built to move crowds efficiently. When the show closes, its surplus is about £186,000. That money helps establish South Kensington's Museum District, where design becomes a public mission. The Victoria and Albert Museum grows from this legacy, including founding collections shaped by the exhibition's educational ambitions. A temporary show leaves permanent rooms behind. That is one of the exhibition's strangest afterlives. It promises novelty, then builds institutions meant to decide what good design should mean for generations. The Crystal Palace itself refuses to stay temporary. Between 1852 and 1854, workers dismantle it, move it south to Sydenham, and rebuild it larger. At Sydenham, the palace becomes a leisure destination. Concerts, gardens, displays, and family outings beneath familiar glass. The fair's logic survives after the fair. Then, in 1936, fire consumes the Sydenham building. The glass palace disappears, but its image persists in photographs, plans, souvenirs, and memory. Fire can erase a structure without erasing its argument. We still build spectacles that promise the future, invite crowds, and sell a version of progress. Modern world fairs inherit its grammar: national pavilions, technological marvels, crowds moving through curated futures, and claims that commerce can teach the public. So do shopping malls, flagship stores, and product launches. They borrow the same lesson: arrange objects dramatically, and people may mistake consumption for participation. The exhibition's strongest claim was not that Britain possessed every invention. It was that Britain could gather, classify, display, and judge the world's production. That claim should make us uneasy, because classification is never innocent. Whoever arranges the room can decide whose work looks modern, whose looks raw, and whose voice disappears. Britain's empire supplied more than exhibits. It supplied access to land, raw materials, markets, and political authority, often gained and maintained through coercion and conquest. Whisper. The spectacle becomes harder to admire when we ask a simple question: who paid the price before the object reached its polished case? Still, millions of visitors found something real here: a chance to see distant materials, new machines, and design ideas otherwise kept beyond ordinary reach. We do not need to choose between wonder and critique. The honest response is sharper: admire the engineering, then follow the power that made the display possible. Try this at your next museum visit. Pause before the masterpiece. Ask where its materials came from, who made it, and who had authority to collect it. Then look for the quiet information: provenance, colonial context, maker, trade route. If the story is missing, that absence may be part of the story. Choose one great exhibition object in the digitized catalog and trace it outward. Follow the maker, the material, the route, and the politics behind its arrival. Consider sharing that trail with someone who loves museums. And if this kind of close-looking history stays with you, a warm subscribe helps us keep making it. Return now to Hyde Park. The palace is gone. The crowd is gone. But the question hanging beneath that glass roof still has not disappeared. At 175 years, the Great Exhibition remains a blueprint for the modern spectacle. Dazzling architecture, global goods, public education, commercial desire, and national self-promotion. It made the future visible. It also taught millions whose future Britain believed it had the right to arrange. That is why the Crystal Palace still matters. The real legacy is a habit of looking. When nations stage their achievements, notice what shines at the center and what gets pushed aside. The Great Exhibition gave visitors a new public ritual: pay admission, join the queue, consume the view, and carry a sanctioned memory home. Treat grand displays as questions, not answers. Who organized this? Who benefits? Whose labor, land, or knowledge made it possible? The Crystal Palace offered a world under glass. At 175, we can still look through it and see invention beside empire. Its lesson is not to reject wonder. Make wonder honest. Ask what it reveals and what it chooses to hide from view. From Hyde Park's palms to South Kensington's museums, the Great Exhibition still asks us to look harder. Not away from beauty, but through it.